Hello everyone, welcome to Hindsight Rewrites, where we dive into some B movies or lesser known movies and change a little this, change a little that, just have some fun with it. If you'd like an overview of some of the criteria I'm going to be using or that I have used in these rewrites, go check out the intro video for the series. I will link that in the description and then come on back. So today's rewrite is going to be a little different as I'm going to be tackling my own film, Invasion of the Nylonians. Like Birdemic, like Last Sect, and the other rewrites, I obviously enjoy this film as is, but as my first outing, there's definitely some places and some plot elements, either because of cast dropouts or just timing that we weren't able to do or that didn't quite pan out the way that we wanted. So we're going to go after this thing with the rewrite treatment, knowing maybe a little bit more so than I have with the other films, of course, what I had available or didn't have available, or what I had available, but because of my disorganization or just not knowing quite what I was doing, weren't able to utilize. Like there was a location that I ended up not even being able to use that I had permission to use, but a combination of cast dropout, but that was kind of caused by disorganization on my end. So that's something in the rewrite here that we're going to be able to play with a little bit and add that in where it wasn't before. And the same thing with some of the timing things where we didn't have time to shoot this or that. A lot of the cast came down from the cities, so it was a bit of a drive, so it's harder to get everybody together. So it's just some playing around with some things to uh, maybe better visualize what the film could have been or what maybe a possible remake could be with a little more organization and things like that. So I've wanted to get into the visual medium for quite some time, but it always seemed like such a huge hill to climb with the funding and the equipment and all the rest. And those are still huge, important parts, uh, but it just seems so overwhelming. So I stuck to writing my stories and just enjoying films on Amazon and Tubi and Netflix and wherever I could find these just kind of lower level or B movie, fun, campy stuff that is more my favorite, as I've mentioned in previous rewrites. But one day, after watching one of these films and seeing some of the creative decisions that they made to get around their limited budget, I decided to try to contact the director. It seemed like a smaller production. Maybe I'd get a response back. I tried it before and got like some cookie cutter stuff or no response at all. But I figured, what the hell, we'll try it. And to my surprise, this guy got me back, and we shared a couple emails then, even a phone call where he said, just start at the bottom. If you want to, make your own story, make your own story. It doesn't matter if it's your phone or a discount camera, from Amazon or wherever. Just do it, and then build from there. Learn this, learn that, and that's the approach I've been taking since. Where we started, with the cheap $100 camera from Amazon, which is what this movie, Invasion of the Nylonians, was made on, and now I got a slightly more expensive one, which is what we made Creature on, and what I'm going to probably be using for the next project or two, barring some kind of huge windfall or anything. So yeah, just taking his advice, starting at the bottom and going up. So I'm not going to mention his name here, but hopefully he's watching, and if you are, thanks, man. Appreciate it. So this is the point where I usually point you to a review from YouTube of the film, but as of yet there isn't one. The film is available on YouTube, so if anybody wants to do a review, I'm more than open to feedback. As I've mentioned, I'm wanting to build this up, learn this, learn that as I go along. So if you want to be the first, head on over there, check it out, and tell me what you think we could play with moving forward. So the poster is pretty basic, as my skills to make said posters are equally basic. But I still like this with the egg and the silhouette in there. But like the Pod People poster, even though I really like that one as it was, Let's still play with it a little bit with a little bit different imagery and a little bit different feel to it. But other than that, the poster's going to stay basically the same. So the film opens with this just really, in retrospect, ugly logo or production thing for the Bell Family Productions with the lightning there. So we're just getting rid of that. So we're going to start off the film with this quote that I really like. It's not the entire quote, it's a portion of it from Shia LaBeouf where he was talking about, don't let your dreams be dreams, just do it. He's entirely right, and it's something, of course, after talking to that director that I have kind of adopted. Is it's not going to be the Mona Lisa right off the bat, but if you have that dream, just do it. Even if it's in a small capacity right away, just do it. So instead of that lightning logo that we got rid of, we're going to just start with this white text on the black screen. Bell Family Productions presents. But I'd also like to add in some night noises like crickets and things like that that will then lead us into that opening scene. So we start with this establishing shot at twilight, not quite night, but not day yet either. And we have this car in the distance, and like the car moving closer to the camera, we also hear the radio, which is some sort of country song, and it gets a little louder as the car gets closer as well. As it gets right in front of the camera, we get this lens flare that will transition us into the car. The first thing we get inside the car is this pair of boxes in the back seat of for Legacy Lingerie, which is more kind of Avon-esque type thing, door to door. That the driver, who we reveal in our next shot, Cami, she's a saleswoman for this brand that's in the back seat. So the music is blaring, and Cami is just kind of nibbling on some of her leftovers from dinner and just jamming out to the music as she's driving along. We cut from Cami to this picnic area in the woods. We hold on that as is until we see in the original film a puff, a pink puff. We're getting rid of that. You see our thumbs down guy there, and we're replacing that with these quick flashes of pink energy or lightning, and you get two of those really quickly, spaced out a little bit, and they push the table just like the original puff did. After the flashes at the campsite, we come back to Cami, who is suddenly starting to have a static on her radio. She finishes one of the breadsticks she was eating, reaches down and begins messing with the dial as the music just becomes total static. Back in our picnic area, we have our thumbs down guy here, and that is just we're replacing these effects from some other ones. They're from the same website, so that meets our criteria. But yeah, we're getting rid of these older effects, and we're just going to be swapping those out. Our flashes from before have now manifested into these pink loops that just keep going round and round and round, with the sparks inside of the loops continuing to go more and more until one of them finally pops off into this pink portal that grows and engulfs the entire screen. From there we cut to Cami in her car, who is overwhelmed by the pink energy from the portal. She struggles to maintain control of the car, unable to see because of the light, as the vehicle eventually loses power. To symbolize or visualize losing power, we'll have everything fade to black. Now in the original, I showed the car as it kind of rolled to a stop in this driveway, little roundabout area just off the main road. But in retrospect, I'd rather show not the lights on and the car still moving. So instead we'll just cut from our black to inside the car as it's already stopped now. We'll start just like we did when we first cut to the car before, which is inside, but now those boxes that we've seen earlier have been scattered about from when Cami was trying to maintain control and have busted open a little bit. So outside, Cammy is just very mad. She's swearing, kicking the tire. Not a fan of being broken down out here in the country at night. As she continues to vocalize her frustration, she suddenly begins to hear very faintly a sound, a pulsing sound coming from the woods across the road. Cammy stops her previous activities of swearing at and kicking the car and turns towards the woods and begins to walk towards the pulsing sound. We dissolve from Cammy to our egg on the ground in the picnic area. It is now on our new egg with the new effect in there instead of that other one. And we just hold on that as it continues to make that pulsing sound. You see our thumbs down guy, and that is because in the original I failed on my end to put any kind of light, even if it was some kind of strobe light or lava lamp, anything to indicate the flashing or the pulsing light from the egg as opposed to just pure darkness. So we're going to fix that here, and obviously moving forward if we do it again we do it differently. So we just added a little lens flare in here just to symbolize that this egg is putting off a little bit of light and it's pulsing. The lights are matching the sound. So Cammy enters the area and just looks at the egg inquisitively. What the hell is that thing? After she says that, we cut back to the egg, now a tighter shot than we had earlier as it continues to pulse, both with light and sound. As Cammy's gaze fixates on the egg, something beyond that pulse begins to echo in her mind.
Touch it. Touch it. I have to touch it.
Cammy reaches down, and upon contacting the egg, it lets out this exploding flash that consumes the screen, similarly to how the glow or the flash did when she was in the car. In the original, we come out of our flash with Cammy still standing, holding on to this small tree as this cluster of lightning is around her. Instead, I want her to be on the ground, just coming to, having been briefly knocked out. So as you can see, I've lit up the area here in the still like I did when she first entered the picnic area, as I should have done while filming. So she comes to and she sees the cluster of lightning above her just hovering until it finally descends on her and attacks her. She's writhing around in agony as this lightning is trying to assimilate with her. This alien or this otherworldly force is trying to become one with her, and it's just not quite working because she is just screaming out in pain and then begins to get a burn on her arm. With the assimilation not going according to plan, the lightning retreats back to its hovering state and just stays there for a moment before then we get this cut to the lightning's POV with all this static as it looks over its subject and then eventually zooms in on the leg area, which she's wearing the nylons, and the lightning looks and it sees all these fibers that look very similar to like an electric circuit. So we get this explosion in the fibers of Cammy's nylons and a flash back out to the ground, where now the burn starts to go away and all those screams of agony from before become screams and cries of something much more pleasurable. Cammy's altered cries now of pleasure echo into the night as we fade to black and we get our title card. So we'll hold on our title card before going into our credits. Since I'm not going to be changing the credits, it's one of the elements that I really enjoy, that I think turned out really well from the film. We don't really need them here. So we're just going to keep them as is, this nice, where it went through space and it showed all the different cast, and then eventually, my credit at the very end as we're descending towards Earth. So from there, then we will just transition briefly to black before going to the next scene. So we'll fade into this establishing shot of the school, River City University there on the subtitle, and you got a few students just moving about outside there on campus. So we cut to inside where we're introduced to Professor Olivia Winters as she's just working in her office. As she's doing so, she gets a knock on the door, tells the person to come in, and that's where we get our introduction to John, an athlete who has recently become ineligible due to poor grades, so he is storming into the office demanding basically that Olivia change or fix the grade. So despite John being very rude, Olivia keeps her cool, tells him that she will take a look at his file and see if there's something she can do. So he sits there, as you can see, just very pouty and pissy as she's taking a look at everything. And she eventually gets done looking and tells him that he's actually been performing pretty poorly in this last test that they had, really screwed him up, and that he's going to be ineligible until that grade is bumped up. In the original, I jumped right to John asking about extra credit. Instead, I'd rather have him start out by talking to her like he does the other professors, where it's almost a negotiation. Like, okay, well, what are we talking? Like a D or a low C to get me eligible again? What do you need to, just type on your computer, do whatever you need to do? She's not having any of that. She wants him to actually earn it. Again, he's not happy. He's used to being able to just kind of do whatever he wants as an athlete. So then he finally relents and like, okay, fine, I guess what? I'll write an essay or something. Will that give me enough extra credit?
Well, you see, this university actually has a series of weather sensors planted all over the state. The Shadyville sensor went down last night, and I'm going up this weekend to fix it.
So, my chance at extra credit is being your pack mule this weekend?
I prefer the term student assistant, but if you come with me, I will apply enough extra credit so that you'll be eligible for your athletic scholarship.
Well, since I don't have much of a choice.
Great.
When are we leaving?
Meet me at 6 p.m. in the parking lot behind the school, okay?
Okay.
When he's just about out the door, John is reminded by the professor to bring clothes that he doesn't mind getting dirty, since they will be out in the woods and messing around with dirt and all the rest of it. He sighs and is like, fine. When he's out in the hallway, he mumbles to himself, Coach will get me out of this. So from there we will dissolve to some B-roll of our town, Shadyville, or outside of it actually, near the park and the area where Cammy broke down the night before. In the original, I had this where the Sid character got out of his truck and walked up to the hill. Instead, from our sign and the B-roll, we're going to just cut to this establishing, or this B-roll of the spillway, which is gorgeous to look at. Horrible for audio, but gorgeous to look at. So here I just want to note, you'll notice that there's a difference in the seasons. In some of the scenes it's fall, and other ones it's summer. Well, we had filmed some of them earlier scenes with Cammy and Sid in the early parts of the summer of 2020, and then various delays, some of which were my disorganization, others beyond my control, pushed filming a lot of the other stuff until fall. So at this point we're just going to call it fall, and anything you see that isn't fall would be rectified in a reboot or a rewrite. So from our establishing of the spillway, we will cut to Sid, who's walking down the hill there to check his fishing lines. This is something that I've done, and especially somewhere that you're familiar with or comfortable leaving your stuff, where you'll maybe leave a line out all night, or while you go to do something. Maybe he left it there when he went to get breakfast or something. So either way, he's coming back to check his fishing line that he's left out. He sees that there's something on it, and goes to bring it in, and the line snaps, and he tosses the pole in frustration and sits down. While he's sitting there, he is mumbling to himself, "What do I have to do to bring in this catfish?" So from Sid, we cut to a reveal of Cammy, who has now been fully assimilated by the pink alien lightning. As we saw it with the fibers when she was on the ground, it is bonded to her nylons and is kind of using that as the means for assimilation. And she is now making her way to Sid's location. So we get our thumbs down guy here because this scene was brought to my attention by one of the actors in the film, who pointed out that as a now assimilated, alien seductress, Cammy would not be stumbling around, even with the hill and everything. She needs to be the most intimidating that she can be, even in a campy little film like this. So we're going to be cutting her on the hill there because of that logic. With that previous scene cut, we'll extend this other scene where she was walking in a little longer, and then dissolve that into she and Sid getting into his truck. We watch Sid back his truck out, and they pull out of the park, and that will fade us to Olivia's office, where she is on the phone with John's coach.
Just assign him an essay. Why do you have to drag him to the middle of nowhere?
You and I both know that he is not going to be the author of any essay that I assign. At least if he goes on the trip, it ensures that he earns his grade.
This is such a load of crap. You just want him to be your whipping boy for the weekend.
Think what you want, but I am not the one robbing him of an education to fill some trophy case.
Get off your high horse, Winters.
It's simple. He goes, or the grade does not change.
After hanging up with the coach, Olivia tells Vicky, who had walked in during the coach conversation, that she's glad that she walked in and her's part of that, because she is actually in a similar situation to John with her academic scholarship.
I know, and I've been talking to the other professors, and they've been letting me do some extra credit to catch up in some of those classes. Do you have anything that I can do?
Actually, what are you doing this weekend?
So from there, we will dissolve to Sid working on Cammy's car. Cammy is on the tailgate of his truck, just kind of moving her legs back and forth. "Thank you so much for doing this. I don't know what happened to it last night. It just stopped." Sid gets up from his crouch position over the engine there, and he discreetly looks at her legs before responding with, "Well, your battery was totally fried. Did anything else get hot?" Continuing her actions from before, Cammy shakes her head. "No, I don't think so. Like I said, it just stopped." Sid closes the hood while Cammy makes her way to the driver's door. "Well, this used battery will get you going for now, but make sure you get a new one as soon as you can." When she's about to get in, Cammy turns back towards Sid and thanks him once more for helping her out, and offers him some form of repayment for his assistance.
When was the last time you had Italian food?
Does canned ravioli count?
No, that doesn't count. Well, I know this good place over in Westburn. They have really good garlic bread. Pick me up at 7?
Alright, see you at 7.
So we got our thumbs down guy here, and that's because in the original I did this weird kind of zoom up into the sky. Instead, I'm going to take this other clip that I have, which is the two vehicles just leaving one behind the other out of this area where Cammy had broken down. And that is how I will end the scene instead of that weird zoom. So here we got our thumbs down guy again, because at the time I thought this was a great idea, but now I know better. And that is this shot, this establishing, this B-roll shot, isn't actually one of the towns we filmed in. It's just some random small town that I found on YouTube. So instead, we're going to be going with some actual B-roll from one of the towns that we were filming in. So from our cars leaving the breakdown area, we will show Cammy with this B-roll moving into the Shadyville, into town. Starting here with like some shots on the outskirts of town near the elevators, then maybe a little deeper into town where we get closer to our park, which will actually play a part later, so a little bit of foreshadowing. And then eventually Cammy makes her way to her house, which is this barn house kind of on the outside, maybe the opposite side from where she entered town, but now she's on the other side of town, which is where her house is at. So from the exterior, we'll fade to inside where Cammy, who is now a full-on host for the pink lightning or the alien that we've seen before, is trying to figure out why that initial assimilation from the park, when it was trying to burn her and everything, why that failed. So when she's doing her research, she finds out about the high level of water in the human bodies, and that is why it did not react very well with the direct assimilation attempt from the lightning entity or alien that we've seen before. So here's where I'd like some kind of inner dialogue between the possessing alien and some bit of Cammy that's still, sort of in control, especially due to the altered assimilation. So the Cammy part of the equation asks, well, if you don't like the water, why'd you come here? And the alien side will say, well, I didn't come here on purpose. There's an emergency situation on my home planet. I had to transport quickly and didn't have time to punch in precise coordinates. The alien half then tells Cammy to look into why the altered assimilation with the Nylons worked and what's special about those. So Cammy searches the internet again, this time pulls up a page about Nylons, their breakdown and all that the alien can look at, and like it had figured when it changed its plan back at the park, the fibers act as an electric circuit that allow the entity to only exert as much energy as needed to control the host, as opposed to all of it, which would burn her up like we saw it trying to do before. And then the excess can just circulate through the fibers again like a circuit. So even though there is part of Cammy that's still for all intent and purposes Cammy, she is assimilated. She is fully on board with the alien agenda. She is just, not completely, some robot or whatever. So she is conversing with her new roommate, we'll call it. So she asks the entity, what about replication? How are we going to assimilate other people? The alien half responds by telling her that usually after they've assimilated a being, it's just a matter of touch to replicate that into the next person, and so on and so on. So let's give it a shot with the nylon, since that is the catalyst for the assimilations. So Cammy gets a normal pair of legacy nylons that she has sitting around and puts them between her hands. The lightning comes and transforms the package into a slightly different package, but more importantly, it has turned the stockings that were inside of there into the pink ones like she's wearing. So Cammy comes down the stairs holding the new package. Well, that's easy enough. And if it's like you said, we can just continue that down the chain. Each person that gets the new pair and becomes assimilated can create another one and another one and another one. This is where the alien half chimes in. No, due to the altered assimilation, only the prime host will be able to create more nylons like we just did. Women who put on those created nylons will become assimilated, but they themselves will not be able to do any replication. That will be limited to us. So to try to get around this issue, Cammy and the alien entity come up with a plan to try to use electronic devices to store that replication energy, so that way Cammy doesn't have to physically be everywhere to create more nylons. They can maybe store some up for others to use and so on. Their first attempt with the microwave does not go well. From the destroyed microwave, we dissolve to the exterior of the school, where Olivia and Vicky are getting ready to head out. John hasn't arrived yet. Vicky's saying, hey, let's just leave without him. Olivia's like, no, we'll just wait a few more minutes. So Vicky shrugs and just gets into the passenger seat while Olivia waits near the back of the vehicle. John does show up, and Olivia tells him, we're about to leave without you. What do you mean, we? Olivia informs him that there's another student that's going with them that also needs extra credit. And John says, oh, whatever. Then he kind of shrugs, gets into his side of the car there, and they take off for their lovely trip that totally won't go wrong at all. From there we fade to the shopping center, and we come to our first location that was available. Actually, there were two malls where I could have permission for limited filming that we never ended up using due to some of those cast dropouts and things like that I mentioned before. So we're going to utilize those here with some pictures from both those malls kind of put together. Just imagine they're all the same one, which is what they would have been had they appeared in the film. They would have portrayed the same mall, which is the Shadyville Mall. So inside we're introduced to the character of Maxine, who did not appear in the original film but was a last-minute dropout, and at the time we didn't end up filming her scenes, but I did have this other actress who appeared later as someone else. So with our hindsight, we are now repurposing the actress we did have available into that Maxine role. So this is a little later in the day, about dinner time, or a little bit before that, and Maxine is looking at her phone, about to enjoy some takeout, when Cammy comes into the mall holding a bag. Maxine looks, greets her, but then asks what is in the bag. Cammy tells her that it's a special new line from Legacy, and even does a little modeling with her own legs with the pink, and then hands a package to Maxine as a free sample. Maxine, in similar fashion but not quite as intense as Cammy when she was looking at the egg earlier, just stares intently at the package as Cammy tells her to enjoy them, but she's running late for a date. From there, we dissolve to an establishing of the spillway with that filter on it. It is not quite night, but not quite day. It's that same kind of time frame as when we initially saw the car driving, so that very close to twilight. Cammy and Sid are done with their dinner and are now back at his fishing area where he's got a line out, and they're just sitting there enjoying some beers, just waiting, hoping to get that damn catfish. So Cammy hands a beer over to Sid and asks him to open it. He does so while saying, what would you ladies do without all those big strong men in this world? And she says, well, I suppose we'd figure something out. And he's like, yeah, maybe. She then closes the cooler, puts her leg up on it. Like before, he's fascinated and looks at it, this time going a step further and putting his hand on the soft fabric. Lightning begins to emanate. He cannot pull his hand off of the leg, and before you know it, a large flash causes Sid to disappear. With Sid gone, Cammy gets a new beer, this time opening it with a little bit of lightning appearing on her hand. Thank you, Sid. Your strength will come in handy. From there, we will cut to this establishing of the Shadyville Water Tower, and then into a restaurant where Olivia, John, and Vicky, who have just arrived in town, are having some dinner.
You're an animal.
Excuse me for liking food.
There's a difference between liking food and scarfing it down.
So, what brings you on this wonderful weekend getaway?
I just wanted the extra credit.
Sure, that's the reason.
I'm sure if you shared your reason for being here, that she might be more willing to share hers.
I've already got a pretty good idea. He couldn't get you to bow down like all of his other professors, so here we are.
My grades aren't that bad.
Okay, maybe you should share your reason, since it sounds like you have a pretty good idea of why he's here.
Fine. My grades are in the tank, and I don't have professors covering my ass. And Professor Winters here told me about this extra credit, so here I am.
If you suck at school so much, why bother staying?
I don't suck at school. I just thought I could breeze through it like high school, and I got a little overwhelmed.
Please, no cursing.
Yeah, flunker, no cursing.
So gross. This is gonna be a long weekend.
So from the restaurant scene, we're going to be cutting to a night scene at the mall. But first we got a little character shuffle that we got to do here. Our original Ron, who is just up here on screen now, is my son, who was filling in for this gas station scene for the Ron actor who had dropped out or didn't show. Pick one. Either way, this actor, my son, he has some bigger shoes that he's going to be filling in this rewrite later in the film, probably in part 2. So for this Ron that we're going to be using now, I'm just going to do a stock image guy. So we cut to our mall where Maxine has now changed and put on those nylons that she was given earlier by Cammy, and she's just sitting in her chair there, kind of stretched out, showing them off at least a little bit on the lower part there. And we have our Ron walk in, and he's, first he just greets her like, "Hey, how's it going?" And then he notices the new nylons. Like, "Wow, those are interesting. Where'd you get those from?" She tells him that she got them from Cammy. It's part of her new line with Legacy. And like we seen with Sid at the car repair site, Ron can't take his eyes off of the nylons. Kind of pulled in by him like we've seen with the other ladies and with Sid. And Maxine beckons him over like, come on over. They feel amazing. Why don't you go ahead and touch them? You can if you want." And he comes over and he reaches down to touch them. Like with Sid, we see lightning come from the nylons and begin to overtake Ron, and it grows and it grows and eventually becomes a flash that sends Ron away. It makes him disappear just like we've seen with Sid. So here's where I'm going to cut off part 1, and like the other parts from the other rewrites, when we've cut those in half, I'll get a little bit more into detail about my overall thoughts, especially given that this is my project, and all of this is just to kind of look back, hindsight, what I could have done or should have done differently. Some of the effects, I should have took a little bit more time to find some better ones. These are all from the same resources where I got the original ones. So again, just more of that taking your time, not getting too rushed. Same thing with, hindsight. I got the idea with the audio as far as those whispers and everything, instead of having to overutilize the lightning, using that more as, when the ladies are turning or when they're disappearing the guys, as opposed to pretty much every time you see, the nylons or the packages on screen, we can, now utilize those whispers, in maybe that mental connection that'll help, with some exposition, with like we've seen with Cammy, talking, kind of to herself, but not, with some of that. So, hope you enjoyed this part 1. As always, just like, comment, subscribe. It helps us grow the channel and continue to progress. And then go check on the Patreon if you'd like. And as always, if you don't, that is cool as well. And I will see you all next time on Hindsight Rewrites.